Hi and welcome to another tutorial from Blender Insight, and it's time for a new pattern. And today I was thinking that we do this typical metal floor pattern that you can see in almost every game that has some type of metal floor. And it looks rather easy. It's 5 diagonal lines and then it's rotating 90 degrees and then we get some other 5 diagonal lines. Since we will work with metal, I also added an HDRI that I thought was good enough for this one, and it looks something like this. And you can put in whatever you would like to have as an HDRI. It's just so we get some reflection to the metal. And if you look at this one more, it's also so that whenever we get some diagonal patterns in a weave or like this, I normally do them without diagonal first, so I just do it like a straight line. So you think of this like a straight line in the X direction, and then I just rotate everything 45 degrees in the end. But let's start now so we don't talk too much, and I start with the texture coordinate, so Shift A, input, and a texture coordinate, so we get the UV. Then I will add a scale because we will change this 5 times, so we add a scale, put 5, so we get 5 stripes, and I add a fraction to split it up, and then we also need to make this in this way anyway, symmetrical, and that I do if I just take this. It's easy to explain. Right now I've done these parts here. The scale makes it like 0 to 5, but the fraction splits it up, so we have 0 to 1, 0 to 1, and so on. But now we have the 0 point here, and I would like to have it in the center, so we do a subtract and a multiply, which we always or almost every time do. So I put this to 0.5, then I copy this by pressing Shift D, and change this into multiply, and make some room here, so we get everything in like this. But now I also need to change this to 2, so we get it from -1 to +1, and we would like to have it in only positive, so it's an absolute we put in here, so I write absolute as well and put that in here. And now we need some white and black so we can see what we have in. So if I just drag this out and write separate XYZ and take the X out here, you can see now that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a half here and a half here, so the total would be 5. It would be more easy if we had a complete in the end and in the beginning as well. And to make that happen, it's just to add a subtract after the absolute here. So Shift D, and then I can put in a subtract and put this to the bottom, and I put 1 in the top. And as you can see now, we have a complete tubes or lines or rows or whatever we would like to call these, but we have 5 in total anyway. And now we need to make these sharp endings on all of these, but we cannot use just a Y here because then we get it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times here as well. So we can do it by using math here, or we can just repeat this without the scale. So if I just take everything here like this, just copy it and put that from the UV. So we do almost everything exactly the same, but we jump the scale. Then we can play with this just for 1 time in the starting and 1 time in the end here. So we need to separate XYZ here as well, but in this time we need it for the Y direction, so we get it like this. So now you can see it's darker here and it's darker here and it's not so dark here. So that we can use together with this. So now it's only a matter of how do I combine these things to make something change in the top and in the end here. Well, we can use a power. A power is powerful. I have shown that in earlier tutorials. So if we add a power here, then we can just use that power and multiply the result with the X here. So if I just take this one, Shift D to duplicate, change it to multiply, put that in here, you can see now that it starts to shrink here, and we can increase or decrease it by playing with these numbers here. So if we take it to something like this, then we have it in the top here, but that is a bit too much. So then we can add a smooth minimum to take down this brightness and make it more black in the edges or in the top and the bottom. So we can add a smooth minimum here. So I just copy this one, Shift D, and we change it to smooth minimum. By changing these values here, you can see now that it shrinks, and now it looks more like this image here. So here we can just play with different numbers until we think that we have something that looks good. And that is more, yeah, you use your eyes, you see what you get, and then you get something that this is good. This is what we would like to have. So perhaps something like this. So now we have that in, and we can put in a clamp just so we don't go over 1 or below 0. So that is the base, and now we need to be able to duplicate it and also to rotate it. So to rotate it, we of course need a vector rotate. So Shift A, go to vector, vector rotate, and we can put that in here and then have that here. But we also need to be able to do a duplicate, so we have it many times. So we can add a scale in the beginning, Shift D, copy the scale here, and now you can see we have a lot of them. And we can also add a fraction, so we get it like this. And right now you can't see anything, but if you can see now that it rotates, but it doesn't rotate from the center, it rotates from the corner on each tile. So to make it rotating from center, we change it to 0.5 here, and now you can see it rotates the correct way. So everything works fine now. But what we also need to do right now is to make it so every time it rotates 45 degrees in this direction, and then it rotates 45 degrees in the other direction. But we should not do it like this, because if we do it like this, then you can see it cuts the ending here. So it would be better if we use either 0 or 90 degrees when we change this. So as I said in the beginning, we rotate everything when we have fixed all the tiles. So that means that we first fix the tiles, so a small internal rotation, and then we do a big rotation on the complete texture, and then we don't miss out on the corners here. So to make this happen, we can use the scale here and drag and right floor. And as I have said before in other tutorials, when you use the floor, you take away the decimals. So we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the X and in the Y direction, since I have the scale of 5 here. And now I can separate it by separate X, Y, Z, and just add them together. So every time we get the new calculation here, meaning a new tile, we get the new value out. So can just put in add, and then we need to rotate it, and to make a good rotation, then we need to transform this degrees into radians. And for a complete 90 degrees radians, we use half of a pi. So we can then take this and just multiply it and put in this little sign here, which means driver. But if I just write that sign and then pi, I get 3.14159 and so on. And then I just can divide that by 2, and we get this value. And if I put that in here, you can see now that we are really close to what we have here. So as I said in the beginning, the only thing we have to do now is to rotate this in the start here. So we can just copy the rotation that we had here, Shift D, put it here, and change this to 45 and you get this pattern here. So now it's just to add some color and some bumps and so on. So we can add some color ramp here, like this, put it in. So now we can take this to be like dark gray or something, and this a bit brighter, but almost, it's more the bumps that will do the color later on. Everything should also be metallic, a smaller amount of roughness perhaps. And now we need some bump in, so Shift A, vector, bump, put that in here, take down the strength and distance a bit, and then just take the smooth minimum to the height here. And bam, we have it. It's now here, and we can control the amount of tiles by changing the scale here. So it's very easy to just change the scale and you get it as small or as big as you want, and everything works fine. So not too hard to do, but still a very useful pattern that we use very often in games, and you can make this softer if you want just by changing the values here. So you can play with the power to make it more like this, or yeah, even inverse it, or you can play with the smooth minimum to make it more soft. You can also, if you like it to be more soft just for the bump, then you can just take a new smooth minimum and add here as well. But this is the base anyway, so with this you are finished, you have something that looks good, and that is all we want. So hopefully you learned something today as well, and I just do as usual, say bye for now and see you later.